Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7. My name is McGlynn. We'll start today with our Ukraine update on day 420 of Russia's invasion. Inspections of ships are resuming after a 2-day hiatus under a UN-brokered agreement on the safe export of grain from Ukrainian Black Sea ports, the Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Kubrikov said today. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will discuss the Ukraine Black Sea grain export deal with UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres in New York next week. Russian drones struck Ukraine's southern Odessa region overnight and caused a fire at an infrastructure facility, the head of the military command of the Odessa region, Yuri Kruk, said today. No casualties have been reported and firefighters were working at the scene. Suspilny, Ukraine's state broadcaster, reports that late yesterday evening the Russian army dropped 2 aerial bombs on Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region. They say that houses were damaged, about 60 stalls were burned down in the market, 2 people were injured, and rescuers are looking for 2 more people under the rubble. Rodion Miroshnik, one of the Russian-imposed officials in Ukraine's eastern Donbas region, has posted to Telegram to report that the occupied city of Novakhovka is under fire from Ukrainian forces. Citing the city administration, he writes, "The whole city is under fire and there are already wounded." A former Wagner mercenary has admitted to killing and torturing dozens of Ukrainian prisoners of war in one of the most detailed first-person accounts of atrocities committed by Russian forces in Ukraine. Alexei Savichev, 49, a former Russian convict recruited by Wagner last September, told The Guardian in a telephone interview that he participated in summary executions of Ukrainian prisoners of war during his 6 months of fighting in eastern Ukraine. Russia's state-owned TASS news agency is reporting that authorities in Crimea claim to have thwarted a sabotage plot aimed at energy infrastructure. The FSB states that a man has been detained. South Korea might extend its support for Ukraine beyond its humanitarian and economic aid if it comes under a large-scale civilian attack, President Yoon Suk-yeol said, signalling a shift in his stance against arming Ukraine for the first time. Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chair of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, threatened South Korea that if they changed their stance, a quid pro quo would be to see the latest Russian weapon designs in the hands of our partners from the DPRK. Russia is carrying out a surveillance program aimed at energy infrastructure in Nordic waters around Denmark, Norway, Finland and Sweden, according to a new investigation by media companies in the region. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky visited Ukrainian troops yesterday in Avdiivka in the Donetsk region. According to his office, Zelensky listened to commanders' reports on the battlefield situation and gave awards to soldiers. Poland announced plans to install thousands of cameras and motion sensors along its border with Russia's Kaliningrad enclave to prevent what Warsaw says are illegal migrant crossings orchestrated by Moscow. Polish Interior Minister Mariusz Kaminski said that the system would join a barbed wire fence being built on the 200-kilometre frontier. The Deputy First Minister and Wellbeing Economy Secretary Neil Gray visited Deer Green Coffee Roasters in Glasgow today to discuss the Scottish Government's plans for a wellbeing economy, outlined in the portfolio prospectus. The prospectus includes promises to deliver public services by creating the UK's most progressive tax system, increase the number of workers earning at least the real living wage while narrowing the gender pay gap, making Scotland a leading European startup nation in which more businesses are created and grow to scale, increasing international exports while diversifying into new markets, laying the foundations to produce 5 gigawatts of hydrogen production by 2030 as part of a Scottish hydrogen supply chain, and implementing a new deal for local government, including a fiscal framework. During her visit today, the Deputy First Minister discussed plans for people-focused public service, the government's net zero goals, internationally competitive green technologies, and advanced manufacturing, stating that developing a well-being economy is not just good social practice, it makes sound economic sense. Earlier today, I spoke with Economy Secretary Neil Gray to find out more about the well-being economy. How would you describe the idea of the well-being economy to someone who's unfamiliar with the concept?
The well-being economy is about making sure that we are seeing good economic growth, but we're using that for a purpose, and that is about making sure that we are protecting our people and our planet. We're making our economy work for the people rather than the other way around. So it's about making sure that we're seeing greater fairness, we're driving down child poverty, and we've got a series of metrics that measure how we're doing that goes beyond the traditional GDP measurement of the success of an economy and looks more at how we're ensuring that we're creating that well-being in our nation.
And how does the well-being economy relate to economic growth overall?
So it's about making sure that there's a really good partnership with business, and we're generating that investment in our economy that allows business to thrive, that generates the revenue that allows us to invest in good public services, ensures that there's a good redistribution of wealth, and ensures that we're protecting people and planet. And there's a real opportunity here in Scotland with our vast renewable energy resource to see a good, just transition. That obviously has an important dynamic in terms of us meeting our net zero ambitions, but also ensures that we are generating the economic rewards for our country as well.
And lastly, how confident are you that the pledges made in the policy prospectus will be fulfilled by 2026?
So these are ambitious targets that we've set ourselves. These are ambitious measures by which we are asking the people across Scotland to hold us accountable to. I'm going to be making sure that every day and week in the next 3 years I'm going to be looking at those commitments to ensure that we are honouring them and that people have a very clear sense of what it is that we're trying to achieve. In the economy space, it's about making sure that we have a growing economy, we have more people in good, well-paying jobs, we have a good, fair work principle behind us. We're also looking at reaping the economic rewards that comes with our just transition, taking people with us on that journey. It's going to be ambitious, it's certainly going to be challenging, but I'm very much looking forward to making sure we meet those challenges.
Thank you.
Thanks.
In the Scottish Parliament today, Cabinet Secretary for Social Justice, Shirley-Ann Somerville, announced the Scottish Government's decision to challenge the UK Government's Section 35 order to block the gender recognition form.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Parliament has already been informed of the petition lodged by Scottish Ministers last Thursday for judicial review of the Secretary of State for Scotland's decision to make an order under Section 35 of the Scotland Act preventing the Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill from proceeding to royal assent. I must make clear that, as always with live legal proceedings, there are strict limits on what I can say, and I must not enter into the substance of our petition or the UK Government's statement of reasons. I'm sure that members will understand this restriction. However, I wanted to make this statement today to explain the decision as fully as possible to Parliament. We have not taken this decision lightly. We have considered it carefully, and it was clear to us in our deliberations that allowing the UK Government's veto on the democratic decisions of this Parliament to go unchallenged would undermine our democracy. Equally, the veto was used with no prior discussion or warning and without ever hearing from the UK Government about what amendments they would have wanted in the bill. That cannot go unchallenged because of the implications for future legislation and for devolution, particularly as the Secretary of State refused our offers to work on potential changes to the bill. To this day, I can confirm that the UK Government has not offered up a single area for amendment that would satisfy them in relation to the issue of gender recognition reform. Therefore, if we want to take a stand and protect our democracy and devolution, there is no option but to pursue this legal challenge.
Somerville stated that she plans to publish the Government's application to the Court of Session tomorrow. If the case goes ahead, it will start at the Court of Session in Edinburgh with a judicial review into whether Secretary of State for Scotland, Alistair Jack, was entitled to block the bill. Judges of the court will be tasked with deciding whether the order laid at Westminster has satisfied the strict conditions set out in the Scotland Act. Commenting on the announcement, the Scottish Greens Equality spokesperson, Maggie Chapman MSP, said that the UK Government has acted disgracefully. This challenge is vital for the rights of trans people and for Scotland's democracy. It should be supported by everyone who believes in human rights and devolution. SNP Treasurer Colin Beattie, MSP, has issued a statement today following his release from police custody. Beattie was arrested and held for questioning by Police Scotland as part of their ongoing investigation into the funding and finances of the Scottish National Party. Beattie said, "This afternoon I informed the party leader that I will be stepping back from my role as SNP National Treasurer with immediate effect. I have also informed the SNP Chief Whip at Holyrood that I will be stepping back from my role on the Public Audit Committee until the police investigation has concluded. On a personal level, this decision has not been easy, but it is the right decision to avoid further distraction to the important work being led by Humza Yousaf to improve the SNP's governance and transparency. I will continue to cooperate fully with Police Scotland's inquiries, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment further on a live case." A decision about Colin Beattie's attendance at the Scottish Commission for Public Audit will be taken near the time of the next meeting. Following a vote, the Scottish Trade Union Congress has come out in support of the bill to establish 150-metre safe access zones, or buffer zones, outside medical facilities that provide abortion healthcare in order to protect those seeking care. The bill has already received support from the British Medical Association and from the Royal College of GPs, and polling shows support from the majority of the Scottish population, with over 12,000 people filling in the consultation about the bill. Scottish Green MSP Gillian Mackay, who proposed the bill, said, "I am delighted that the STUC has supported the call for buffer zones. Nobody should be intimidated when accessing healthcare, and it is vital that we build the biggest possible support for reproductive rights," adding that the shameful anti-choice protests we have seen over recent weeks underline how vital it is that we pass this legislation. I have heard from a lot of service users and medical staff who have told me about the terrible impact these so-called vigils have had. UK inflation fell by less than predicted last month, with the latest figures from ONS showing that inflation remains at a rate of 10.1%. This leaves the UK with one of the highest inflation rates of any major economy, more than those in Italy, Germany, France, and the USA. The continuing high rate of inflation comes amongst a global decline in oil prices, with the impact of Russia's invasion of Ukraine lessening. These reduced prices have been offset by the cost of food and non-alcoholic drinks accelerating by 19.1%. The ONS has said that fruit, chocolate and confectionery and meat prices all increased, while the price of ready meals, sauces and hot beverages rose at the fastest annual rate since comparable records began in 1989. The UK government has assured that the OBR predicts inflation will fall to 2.9% in October, with the Chancellor of Exchequer Jeremy Hunt addressing high inflation rates, saying that these figures reaffirm why we must continue with our efforts to drive down inflation so we can ease the pressure on families and businesses. Commenting on these unexpectedly high rates of inflation, SNP economic spokesperson Stuart Hosey MP said, "Inflation in the UK remains high compared to other major European nations because of Brexit. Combined with the UK predicted to have the lowest growth of any major economy, the UK is on a downward spiral at the hands of Brexit." Richard Sharp's future as chair of the BBC is under question, awaiting the publication of a report on how he was recommended for the job by the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The former donor to the Conservative Party was given the task of overseeing the national broadcaster in 2021. Sharp had also failed to reveal when applying for the job that he had helped an acquaintance arrange an £800,000 personal loan facility for Boris Johnson. Richard Sharp was also Rishi Sunak's boss when the Prime Minister was a junior banker at Goldman Sachs. MPs have criticised Sharp for failing to declare the potential conflict of interest, and the Commissioner for Public Appointments launched an investigation into the circumstances surrounding Sharp's appointment. It is likely that the BBC chair will have the opportunity to make his case before publication. The final report is due to be released imminently, as first reported by the FT, with publication expected next week. Sharp has been briefed on the contents of the report over the past week to give him an opportunity to respond under a standard process for those criticised in official reports. There have been suggestions that the BBC has become too close to the Conservative government after years of sustained political pressure and threats to its funding. However, the BBC itself is unable to remove its own chairman, who is appointed by the government on a 4-year term. Passengers taking bus and coach trips to the continent may lose their right to compensation for delays in Dover under government plans to delete thousands of EU laws. Legislation specifically designed to offer redress for those on trips of longer than 250 kilometres has been omitted from a government list of more than 3,700 laws that could be actively saved, scrapped or changed in Parliament under the controversial retained EU law bill. Unless added, it would mean compensation rights would be automatically deleted from British statute books under a sunset clause, which will sweep away all EU laws at the end of December apart from those actively saved by Parliament. Other areas likely to be affected by the REUL include laws covering a vast range of standards, protections and legal responsibilities, such as health and safety, food standards, farming standards, consumer rights, data protection, employment and environmental protection. Fox News and Dominion have reached a $787.5 million settlement in a dispute over whether the news network knowingly broadcast false claims that the voting equipment company switched votes in favour of the Democrats, paid government kickbacks, and was founded in Venezuela to rig elections for the late Venezuelan president Hugo Chavez. Instead of a 6-week jury trial that would have captivated the attention of the nation, attention has now moved to whether Fox News will issue any retractions or formal apologies. It said in a statement that the settlement reflected its continued commitment to the highest journalistic standards, and that it was hopeful the decision to settle amicably would enable the country to move forward from these issues. This may not be the end of Fox's legal issues, as Smartmatic, a global election technology company headquartered in London, also filed a defamation suit against Fox in February 2021 for $2.7 billion. A new microbe discovered back in September turned CO2 into biomass faster than any other known cyanobacteria, according to scientists. It was found in volcanic seeps near the Italian island of Vulcano, where the water contains high levels of CO2. The researchers hope to use microbes that have naturally evolved to absorb CO2 as a method for removing the greenhouse gas from the atmosphere. Unusually, the new microbe not only absorbs CO2, it also sinks in water, which could help collect the CO2 it absorbs, opening up the possibility for its use in large carbon-capturing ponds. The microbe may also be able to produce a useful bioplastic. In February, the team who discovered the microbe also explored hot springs in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, US, where high levels of CO2 are even higher. They are now analysing those results. The researchers stated that all their data on microbes would be published and made available to other scientists in a database that pairs DNA sequences with bank samples of the bacteria. The project was funded by the biotechnology company Seed Health, which already sells probiotics for human health, has developed a probiotic for bees, and is researching the use of microbial enzymes to break down plastics. Well, that is it for this evening. But before I go, I just want to remind you that at Broadcasting Scotland we depend on the generosity of our supporters. So, to everyone who has donated, and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment, thank you very much. Our programmes will always be free to view. However, if you can afford £5 a month, please consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter. We have set ourselves a target of adding 10,000 new subscribers to enable us to employ staff to make more programmes. Good night, and thank you for watching.